So if we have a lens or a consciousness that's wired for anger, what do we see more of in the world? Things to be angry about. If our state is wired towards love or gratitude or joy, what do we see more of in the world? Love, gratitude, joy. That's what, is essentially reverberating back to us.
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
All right, welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. I am here, Dr. Lona Cook, and I'm actually solo recording today. And I'm going to share with you 4 extremely powerful books that I was reflecting back on, some of the most important books I've read early on in my career of being a chiropractor, becoming someone that knew that they were going to grow a practice and do business. And I think these 4 books in particular help you with all of those things, both being the healer, the chiropractor, the person holding space for other people to improve their lives, and also doing the work internally to be the person that can lead a practice, a mission, a vision, other people as a leader. And so I would highly recommend these 4 books be on your list if you have not read them yet, or maybe you haven't visited them in a while, all worth reading multiple times. So with that, we'll jump in. I know we're kind of at the end of a year, beginning of a new year. And so sometimes just also auditing, like, what have I been feeding myself in what I've been reading, what I've been listening to, what I've been digesting can be a really great way to get your mind on the right track for creating the change and the shift that will need to happen to then create a new year that is improved from where we've been in the past years. I was at a seminar on Friday night that, they really underlined that if you love everything that happened in 2025, then, continue on your way, right? Because you'll repeat it if we don't get intentional about what we're, doing in our own mind's eye, as well as how we're walking these things out. There must be a shift in order to get something different, because we've all heard that saying before that if you want, if you think you're going to create change, but you do the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. Yet we've all had experiences where we believe we're changing, or we think we could get a different outcome, but we haven't actually made a shift, or we haven't made the change that needs to happen. So these 4 books should be extremely helpful for making those changes, especially starting with yourself. So the first book is The 4 Agreements, which is written by Don Miguel Ruiz. And this one, I can't stress enough, that would be a great book, not only to read yourself, but also to bring to your team and potentially even read together as a team. And so the 4 Agreements really gets over, like, what are you really responsible for? And how do you take radical ownership of these things, which really also allows you to let go sometimes of the things that you attempt to control, but really aren't helpful to, like, your own energy and your own personal affect as it relates to how you engage with other people. So the first agreement is being impeccable with our word. So saying what you mean and meaning what you say. And we can all work on that. We also, many of us know this because we know the power of energetics, but the power of what we speak is so important. It really is spelling, if you will. So when we put intention into being impeccable with what we say and owning up to, like, if I am uttering it, then I need to take ownership of it, can be really impactful for yourself and making that shift. If you're someone who says, you know what, maybe sometimes I am being dramatic in my word, or maybe sometimes I'm speaking against myself or speaking against others. So being impeccable with your word. The next one is don't take things personally. And so kind of goes back to, if energy returns to sender, right? The universe kind of already takes care of the karmic loops that people engage in. And so, when you really realize, like, if someone is not being impeccable with their word and speaking against you, at the end of the day, don't take it personally. That is their own thing. It's not yours, right? So learning to just relax and know that you don't have to control everyone else and their expectations, and you don't have to control the way they view the world, but it also doesn't have to influence your own, is a powerful way to just start to take radical ownership of your own state and not let other people's influences dramatically shift how you view yourself. Don't make assumptions is the third one. And as you get into these, they're really juicy because they give you practical ways of understanding where we're getting really lost in assumptions, as well as how harmful sometimes when we make these assumptions, and they're really, that's what they are, assumptions, they're not truths, how it can really destroy other things. So being aware of where we're making assumptions, and this can be great within a chiropractic team too. We work alongside each other, but we all bring different skill sets and we all bring different viewpoints. And sometimes I know I've been guilty of making assumptions that other people see things the way I see them when they maybe don't. And so that's where we have to also ask better questions so that we're not making assumptions. And then the last one is always do your best, right? Which you're never going to go wrong if at the end of the day you can say, I did my best today, or I put my best foot forward. And I think on some level, most of us are doing that a lot of the time. Whether or not we actually acknowledge that to ourselves is another thing. But that is a huge part of that book. So highly recommend reading it with your team. It would be a great way to start the new year. The next one is my favorite book ever, and that is Power versus Force by David Hawkins, written by not a chiropractor, someone who was deeply enmeshed in understanding human consciousness and human states. He was a psychiatrist, I believe, in New York State for many, many years, had a huge practice, and really understood that the way people view the world changes how they engage in their world. And so our state is like the lens in which we almost like co-create our experience. So if we have a lens or a consciousness that's wired for anger, what do we see more of in the world? Things to be angry about. If our state is wired towards love or gratitude or joy, what do we see more of in the world? Love, gratitude, joy. That's what, is essentially reverberating back to us. So this is a really heady book at the end of the day. If you can read Power versus Force and understand the concepts, then he has subsequent books that come after that are, I think, more fun to read. But the original book, Power versus Force, is really important to understand how he did his work. He used applied kinesiology, aka testing, to quantify these different states and the power, or almost like the amperage coming through in those different states of consciousness. And I think on some level, we all have that felt sense. When you're having, quote unquote, a bad day and you're either angry or you're sad or you're feeling shameful or resentful, there's not a lot of power there. There's not a lot of energy moving through you. And certainly we've also had that experience if we're angry and we send an angry email or we make an angry phone call, usually that just leads to more problems, right? And so at the end of the day, especially as chiropractors, where we understand that everything flows above, down, inside out, for me, this book, Power versus Force, was a pivotal understanding of really how much truth was in that statement of life flows above, down, inside out, and understanding that the tone of your nervous system sets the tone of your life and the tone at which that you're reverberating and co-creating your experience, like how practical understanding this really is, but it's heady, right? So definitely a book worth the read. If you pick it up and you can't get through it, at least get the concepts and maybe try one of his other books too. But it's really a powerful book. I can't state that enough. It's definitely one of those ones that was life-changing for me. The next book was actually the first book I ever read with my team. And we read it together when we first opened our original practice. So I've opened several practices since then and know the power of this book, especially if you're newer in practice. You're maybe opening your very first practice and scared because you don't know what you don't know. And that's all of us. So this book is by Wayne Dyer and it's called The Power of Intention. So in the name of it, you obviously understand that your intention is such a critical piece of what you're co-creating and what you're going to experience. So the power of your intention in creating the four walls of your practice, the power of intention in creating your systems, the power of intention of, attracting your best team. This book is something that I think reading and rereading and rereading it is only going to lead to recognizing if you don't have the intention and you don't have the clarity behind your intention, it's harder to create what you really want to create, and how important the intention behind all that you do really is, right? It's that extra special sauce that we add to our material world, is knowing that if I, for example, gave a gift with a ton of gratitude and forethought into that gift has more energy behind it versus something that I maybe didn't necessarily go to the extra step to put that loving attention into it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always time. It's the intention. It's the thought. It's the recognizing, that we can all have that feeling where we might go through the motions sometimes and there's no intention behind it. The other part that's practical about reading this book with your team is it also helps everybody understand that their intention behind, especially in a busy office, as things, sometimes there is an element of like doing things repetitively can feel sometimes like drudgery, going through names, getting ready for the huddle, like printing off paperwork, taking out the trash, making sure the office is tidied up. But the intention behind doing all these small things is the big things. And I want to underline that again. The intention behind the small things are the big things, right? The more we recognize I'm going to do this excellently, I'm going to put my best foot forward, right? I'm going to stay focused on the patient that's on the table and almost like going through a meditation and a prayer as I'm adjusting them because my intention is so much on like honoring them, right? That is a ripple that I think many of us could stand to remember that on everything we do. And that's part of like where your life becomes a bit of a living meditation is like, can we keep the intention we really want behind the things that we're doing, the physicalness of doing the things, whether that's the physical delivering a chiropractic adjustment or the physical embodiment of actually having the one-on-one meetings with our teams is what's the intention behind the things, right? And the more we can have that intention be really in alignment with the highest good and the highest purpose, this is again where like we almost like use like a quantum element of getting more of what we wanted to manifest because we're bringing more power through us. So you can see how these books kind of all speak into each other here, right? So, and then last but not least, this fourth book is just slightly different than the other three in the sense that it's, I think, very practical also for the practitioner element of you. Not that the other ones aren't, but this one especially. It's from Louise Hay. It's the book, You Can Heal Your Life. This book we hand out in practice often. I've given hundreds of copies away at this point in our office because the book is transformative and it also begs people to look deeper at what's going on in their bodies. So You Can Heal Your Life, Louise Hay. This book is all about how our mental, emotional elements also are affecting and co-creating what's happening in our physical body. And I think the coolest part about this book, it's an easy read. Unlike Power versus Force, it's an easy read. But also the back part of the book has almost like a dictionary or a dictionary of all sorts of different physical symptoms. Everything from vertigo to low back pain to heart issues to gallbladder attack to you name it, alphabetized, and you can look up the mind body. So again, as I was studying chiropractic philosophy, going deeper, also, really geeking out on some of Simon Senzen's work. So he has written a bunch of white books with white covers on his website. He's digested, like there's like the full edition of him digesting through all the green books. There's the spiritual writings of BJ Palmer. There's the spiritual writings of Dee Dee Palmer. There's Dee Dee's traveling library. These are the books or the pamphlets that Dee Dee held dear and traveled with, like they were his most prized text, if you will. As I was geeking out early on, reading more and more of the philosophy, reading some of this work from Simon Senzen and trying to like wrap my head around more of like what chiropractic really is, how, Dee Dee said this thing of like, man physical to man spiritual, right? And happening through the nervous system and the power of the adjustment and our knowledge of how important the spine is to that gateway through the nervous system. As I was wrestling with like, what does this mean to me? I really realized like, man, we have generally in chiropractic school focused so much on the physicalness of things, the physical body, the physical bone, the physical elements of the connection of the nervous system. But so much of our philosophy begs us to like go deeper into understanding like things and concepts like intelligence and life force and interconnectedness, our major premise, right? The major premise is conducting everything in the world on some level through this intelligence. And this is just kind of mind-blowing stuff to wrestle with. Louise Hay's book really helped me understand that even our mental, emotional thoughts and emotions are like a map as well. So kind of, again, this idea like everything is organized and there's order to that mind-body element that shows up in the physical. And so certainly as I've trained in younger docs, it's one of those books that I put right at the top of the list, because once you start to see it, you can't unsee it, right? You can see how when patients come in, I'll use an example of a woman who had worked a job for over 20 years, and this job, for whatever reason, the business was closing and it was kind of a shock to everyone, and she lost her job and then immediately had terrible vertigo. And when you start to realize that there is a mind body connection to all of this, it's not that there's not things happening in her physical body. And certainly she had occipital and upper cervical related issues and subluxation patterns. And it's so interesting when we see that, like, the symptom, if you get into the mind body of vertigo many times, is that like everything is sort of in chaos, right? And that there's an ungrounding that's happened. Well, you lose your job of 20 some years, that's kind of an ungrounding effect, right? Wouldn't you say? So reading that book is just, I think, for all of us, that practice really helpful to like help to understand more of the mind body connection. And it also ties in sort of like, again, we have our chiropractic philosophy, most of us, because of our schooling and because of having to pass boards, also got a very medicalized approach that we had to learn that language too. And then there's also like Eastern philosophies and different things. Well, Louise's book, I think, helps bring a much more interconnected picture in, so that we can look at our body like it is this connection. Our nervous system and our bodies are showing us this connection between man spiritual and man physical, knowing that there is a direct connection between the physical body and the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. So I can't underline those 4 books enough. So I'm just going to repeat them one more time through, and I hope you put some of them on your actual tangible, hold the book in your hand, but also certainly could listen to some of them on Audible. And then maybe a couple of them are something that you could do with your team pre-shift, or somehow have a way that you guys are all chewing through these together. Because a lot of times as we learn and we grow and we pour into ourselves, we also want our team to be developing and chewing through some of the similar things. It just makes practice more fun to be able to have a richness there, where we're all speaking similar languages. And that happens from feeding each other through our discussions and through what we're consuming. So the first one is The 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. The second one is Power versus Force with David Hawkins, and subsequent works from him are fantastic too. The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. And then lastly, You Can Heal Your Life with Louise Hay. So I hope these books will help you come in with the right energy to create some newness in 2026. I'm certainly really, really excited for what we have coming down the road for chiropractic, for TRP, and so many things that we can look forward to in 2026. See you there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.